As Hyperliquid approaches its all-time high, I wanted to do a video to break down what is Hyperliquid and why is everyone talking about the Hype token. Remember, this is according to my research. This is based on data that I've collected. This is not financial advice. If you want to keep up to date with crypto and other financial markets, I do have a free newsletter. Link to that will be in the description. So essentially, Hyperliquid is a decentralized perpetuals, exchange built on its own layer one blockchain. So Hyperliquid is a high performance decentralized exchange for perpetual futures, essentially, or perps as people like to call them. So it's one of the biggest ones. It's one of the easiest ones to use. I know before when there was other decentralized exchanges that people didn't like to use them and they struggled to use them, and then Hype came out and it's like, okay, cool, there's an easy way of doing it. There's no KYC, they're easy to access, or they're more accessible to most people. In some countries, yes, but for most people around the world, they are easy to access. So there's no VC backing, there's no token sale, the entire supply airdrop to users. So this is extremely, important to know, because typically in crypto in the past, we've seen people go the exact other way, all right? So this is extremely unusual in crypto. So most projects sell tokens to VCs before launch, and that's why you just see massive pumps and then they just go down. But Hyperliquid actually distributed 31% of the entire supply directly to the users who had used the platform. So no VC allocation, which was really interesting to see. So now the roughly 70% of all on-chain per futures volume is actually on Hype, right? So remember, you've got centralized exchanges. So you've got like Coinbase, you've got Binance, you've got Kraken, you've got these type of things, and then you've got a Hype that is on the decentralized side of things, right? So DEX is about 2% of pubs trading volume in 2023, but by mid 2026, Hyperliquid alone handles 70%. So you've seen the trajectory of kind of Hyperliquid and its growth, and all decentralized perp volume, and roughly 9% of the entire globe perp market is actually on Hyperliquid. So this is growing. So the Hype, is essentially the native token. So a lot of people have been talking about Hype and talking about, could this actually be a legitimate crypto project? We're going to get into the details to why it could be. So look, the revenue model. So real fees, real buyback. So here we've got, you can pause and, I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, but we've got some stats here that I've taken, from tokeneconomics.com. As you can see here, break it down, kind of Hype, kind of where it's up to. And obviously it looks like to be a legitimate and profitable business, which is good to see. This to me is the biggest one. So the S&P 500 licensing is the most significant legitimacy signal when it comes to Hype. So as you've seen on Hype, there's you can trade the NASDAQ, you can trade the S&P, you can trade other stock perps, and this is why I think stocks are looking to go 23 hours. I think I saw today or this week, they're looking to kind of make things more accessible. I think because of the competition from crypto and Hype. So it's got S&P 500, perpetual derivatives, and it's built on Hype. So the S&P Dow Jones Indices is the world's leading index provider. The S&P 500 is the most tracked equity index on earth, and licenses it gives it so much more credibility if it's going to be on Hyperliquid. So it's eligible for non-US investors, so they can now trade the S&P 24/7, not 24 or 23/5 or whatever it is, right? So on-chain with leverage. So you can actually trade the S&P on Hype, and it actually tracks the S&P perfectly. And it's the same with the XYZ markets that they've released as well. You can trade, there's XYZ. It's such a mouthful to say. XYZ 100, which is the NASDAQ. So we've got some stats there as well. So this just adds so much more, legitimacy behind Hyperliquid, and why it could actually be something going into the future, and why you see this. I don't know whether you would, but could you see people who trade TradFi or people who trade options kind of go over towards Hyperliquid? Maybe if it becomes accessible, especially in the US, this definitely could be something that we could see further down the line. The honest caveat. So this is what the data also shows. So revenue peaked for Hyperliquid, roughly when the bull market peaked as well in 2025. The buyback mechanisms, weakens as earnings decline. So 99% of fees buy Hype from the market. Fewer fees means less buying pressure from the token price. So I think with regards to the token price, I'm thinking, is this a good long-term investment? I think it's so hard, to be honest, in crypto for anything outside Bitcoin to see it as a long-term investment. The platform, I've used it before. It's brilliant. It is really good. And look, competition is growing from other things. So you've got Robinhood Chain, amongst others, and there's other things. I think is it Lighter? I can't remember the exact name that's coming on as well. So look, if you're going to invest in the token, be aware of these things. I think it's really hard to value Hype as a token, but what it is as a kind of platform, it is legit, and it seems like the best DEX offering so far that's on the market. So look, the verdict: Hyperliquid dominates on-chain perps, 70% of the market share, and 1 billion in revenue, which is pretty crazy. S&P, Dow Jones licensing, the S&P 500 on Hyperliquid is a major legitimacy signal that this could be something here for the long term. I think it'd be really interesting to see how Hype evolves, because or Hyperliquid, I should say. It's really interesting to see kind of where it does go from here, kind of moving forward. And revenue is falling from its peak, which coincides with the bull market. So I wouldn't look too much into that. I would be looking for okay, cool. You've got things coming on to Hype. You've got stock futures. You've got also some of the IPO stuff. Like you could have got SpaceX on Hyperliquid before SpaceX was on the market, which is interesting. I don't know how they do that. You'd have to look that up. But will Anthropic come on there soon? Who knows? But that's definitely something to watch. It's a great exchange. Now, should you be investing in the token based on it being an exchange? I don't know. Like ETH will be used loads by people, and you could argue that goes into the ETH price, but I think it's very hard to value the coin, if I'm going to be completely honest. But this seems legit. It seems like one of the very few crypto projects which seems legit. As I said, if you want to keep up to date with crypto, I do have a free newsletter. Link to that will be in the description. See you in the next one.